After nap, kept dragging her skirt and her blanket.
4.5.
God, I'm listening to their horror stories.
I
I think
I love when they open up, they got little sticks tucked in.
It's probably just gonna live all over her. She's telling me about this one that's like pinching and scratching and kicking her in the throat.
Because
Oh,
I was
that's
rubbing her
sad.
back and she thought it was
Well, wait till you see some of the videos.
Oh, really?
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started so that we can finish on time. We are here for session 16. My name is Alicia Boston. I'm Center Director for Bright Horizons and trainee for Pyramid Plus Approach. Let's say she's making copies for me, but I have my co-trainer, Rochelle Nadeau, and that is here with us again this evening. And then if you wouldn't just mind taking a minute to introduce yourself again, and then let's share a positive story that maybe happened this week or last week.
My name's Debbie, and I work here at Bright Horizons. And I work with 3 to 4-year-olds and positive. Right, there's a lot of positive stuff that happens. Well, our kids, I have a lot of kids that are just starting to really pick up on their sound books and their sounds, and I'm just loving that. It's super exciting. And that's my positive. Don't get hung up on the positives.
I am Marley. I teach toddlers at Fitzsimmons. It's been a rough week. But one of my kids, instead of just staring at me when I say what's my name, I'm now Other Maria, I'm Other Maria now, which means they're getting ready to say my name.
I'm Abby. I work with toddlers at the Centennial Montessori. So many good things. Our non-walker is starting to walk around the classroom more by himself, and he can walk from the door that we have to go outside to the gate all by himself.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yay.
So he's now walking a lot, and it's really exciting to see because I feel like a mom. Yay!
Proud mom.
Yeah, proud mom moment.
Great.
I'm Adriana. I work at Fitzsimmons. I work with preschool. And the positive is 2 of my kids that are in diapers went potty all week.
Alright, my name is Dulce and I work for Fitzsimmons Early Learning. I work with the students. And I would say that a positive thing is that we had a successful feed in the potty for one of our potty trainers.
Yay.
Like, all week we had been having accident after accident. And finally yesterday we had a successful.
What a huge accomplishment.
Yes.
My name is Deanna and I work at Fitzsimmons Early Learning Center. A positive would be we have a child who comes twice a week, and every drop-off he's had for the past probably almost a month has been really rough. He basically cries the whole entire day and just would pace and pace and pace the room. And today, for the very first time, I don't know what changed, but he walked in and was ready to participate and had no tears.
Great.
Good.
I'm Alex. I work at Denver Athletic Club, and we have one little guy, Owen, who's only been coming once a week. He's been coming about 3 months, and he is not potty trained. He's still in diapers, and he says, I'm waiting until May. I'm waiting until May. So we're like, all right, today's May 1st, today's the day. He did not want to do it.
Oh.
So I'm like, all right, let's go. I've never potty trained a boy. So that was interesting, but it went well. And he was just happy that he was able to stand by the potty and try. You know, I'm like, just try, just get your fire. Let's say, I watched 2.5 Men the other night, and he was working with a little boy, so he was potty trained, like, get your fire hose and put the fire out. I'm like, there we go. And then he's like, okay. I'm like, how do I do this? I teach my brother, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was like, all right, let's go get a Skittle for trying, and now he's doing stamps. He hasn't gone in the potty yet, but at least he's standing there. And he
Baby
just had the
steps.
most, like, he was running around the room when his mom got there. I stood by the potty, I stood by the potty.
Oh, that's good.
So that's exciting.
That was exciting.
Okay, my name is Veronica, and I work at Primrose at Shadow Canyon. And a positive that happened this week would be one of our new potty trained kids this week. He is finally standing up when he pees, so it's less of a mess. And I have wet clothes, so it's great. He's like, I can pee standing up now, and I'm like, yes. So it's awesome. We're so proud of him. He picked it up within like 2 weeks. So yeah.
I'm Ryan. I work at Mary Hill School in Castle Rock, and I work with the infants. But earlier this week, I was in the 3D's classroom, and one of the little boys who was in my toddler class last year, he has some behavioral issues as well. And I was sitting in a chair while they were all eating lunch, and I was asking them about their day, and he came over and stood by my knee, and then he's like, "Oh, I give you a kiss," and so he just kissed me on the cheek, and I was like, "Oh, nice." So that was a tender moment.
Yeah. Nice. Good. Good. So let's see. My positive this week would be that that I was able to hire yet another teacher, which is awesome. She is going to be opening our last classroom at the center, which is even more awesome. And I said grammatically correct. I don't know if that's proper English, but so which is great because we have this huge wait list. We have to open this classroom, and so toddlers, yeah. So Miss Renita will take over toddlers, and she will have 10 toddlers in like no time, like a couple weeks. So, which is awesome. Miss Rochelle, she has some good positive news.
I submitted my applied project for graduation.
Yay! Yeah, and will now be getting her master's. Like you're getting your master's diploma on the 18th.
On the 18th, 9 a.m. at the Tivoli.
Exciting. That's really awesome. Well, good. I'm glad that we all had, during the busy week and, the ins and outs of early childhood education. It's nice to revel in the positives and the little things, even the little baby steps. So, good job, guys. So tonight is session 16. We only just have, after this class, we just have our May 11th class, and then we are done. We won't be seeing each other weekly anymore. But again, like we talked about, remember that you can always reach out to Rochelle, you can reach out to me. There's a lot of support with the Pyramid Plus group, trainers, coaches. Don't forget that you do have a lot of support after this session. So, all right. So then we are going to say a special thank you to our Pyramid Plus funders. Here we talk about Pyramid Plus being an evidence-based program, and that costs money. And so we want to thank these programs, these providers that have been able to fund that, because evidence-based practices don't just happen without research, without studies, without people being involved, and that doesn't always come free. So we do want to say a special thank you to our funders. Tonight we're going to discuss our learning objectives, and we're going to define the definition of challenging behavior. We've got a couple of activities tonight. We've got the 4 corners, and then we're going to talk about our positive behavior support. We're going to look at how we are supporting infants and toddlers, and understanding that challenging behavior. Then we'll have another activity called our roadmap. We're gonna build our team to better understand how to create that behavior support plan. We're gonna talk about how we include our family partnership and how we goal set. We'll do a goal setting activity. We will do our thought seeds activity, and then we will wrap up with our quality improvement and our evaluations. So tonight we're going to assess our current level of skill and comfort with developing a behavior support plan. We're going to talk about our roadmap document, and we're going to take that journey to prior to developing a behavior support plan. We're going to obtain an overview on the steps of creating and implementing a behavior support plan, and then we're going to work as a team together and set goals using our assigned children, our vignettes, to work on that goal setting, all right? So as always, we have our ground rules where we still are, I feel like we've done a pretty good job, you know? Very, very minimal cell phone, if at all, I feel like. Everyone's pretty positive. We do pretty good at staying happy and collaborative. I feel like everybody participates. We're pretty chatty. So. And we do a pretty good job about, you know, starting relatively on time. So, parking lot as well over here. So remember, if you've got anything that you want to add for further or later discussion, don't forget that we also have our challenging behavior website. That is really, actually, it's a fantastic website. I did visit that website when I was downloading. I was printing out some materials for tonight's session this week, and so there's a lot of information on that website, a lot. Okay, you all received a copy of your handouts, and so with tonight's handouts, you have some recommended practices article that talks about addressing persistent challenging behaviors, okay? What that looks like in supporting infants and toddlers with challenging behavior. Then we have our roadmap to behavior support plan, okay? Colorful little triangle or pyramid. Then we've got our handout, which is the individualized intensive interventions. So positive behavior support, which is a family questions and answers sheet. We've got a how to talk with families, do's and don'ts when we're talking about problem behavior. Then we have our prevent, teach, reinforce for young children goal sheet, because we'll use that again tonight when we're talking about goal setting. I really do like this one. This is an overview for creating a behavior support plan checklist, which is really cool. So it contains all the steps to develop and implement a behavior support plan, which I feel like could be really helpful for us tonight, but also, you know, moving forward. We have our overview for creating a behavior support plan resource page. So on that page, there's a bunch of different links to websites that will help with collaboration, strategies, complete guides, all that wonderful information to help to support through that process. Then we wrap it up with our thought seeds, and then I always like to include, sometimes the reference sheet can be really useful as to, you know, where did that resource come from, where did that information come from, so there's also the resource page as well, for the reference page. All right, any questions on the handouts? All right, and we all know where the bathrooms are, water, we're all good, okay. So then, tonight with behavior support planning, we are at the top of the pyramid. We are in our intensive intervention tier. This is sessions 16, 17, and 18. And remember that while everything that we talk about in this training with Pyramid Plus approach, there's also a lot of support through the PTRYC website and the LEAP website as well, okay? All right, so intensive individualized interventions, the triple I. Intensive individualized interventions are used with children who have a very persistent and severe challenging behavior and do not respond to the typical preventative practices, child guidance procedures, or social emotional teaching strategies that would normally work with most children. Okay? So how do we define that challenging behavior? Well, if it triggers your hot button, it can be defined as a challenging behavior because it's most likely affecting your behavior. So the definition of challenging behavior is any repeated pattern of behavior that interferes with learning or engagement in pro-social interactions with peers and adults. So let me ask you, how do you define challenging behavior? What do you consider to be a challenging behavior? How would you define that?
I think that it's I mean, I've had that, like today is a prime example. I just feel like I'm at my wit's end. I feel like I cannot get through to this child. That's where I feel like it's a challenging behavior. I need to figure out something.
So, so when there's a lack of a connection between you and that child, then that for you that's defined as that challenging behavior.
Right, like
Okay.
I feel like when it's challenging for me, I guess,
Right.
that's when it's a challenging behavior, because I feel like, how do I help this kid? You know, how am I gonna get through to this child? That is gonna help them to
Yeah.
change their behavior so that they have a successful time at school.
Right.
'Cause, you know, I'm gonna be here, it's gonna be tough for me, whatever. But what's it gonna be like for that kid,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
That's a struggle.
Well, behaviors that are not responsive to the use of developmentally appropriate practice guidance procedures can be challenging behaviors. Obviously, when we talk about any challenging behavior, I mean, tantrums, aggression, vocal and motor disruptive behaviors, distraction, self-injury, non-compliance. There's that piece for you, Debbie, and withdrawal. So, why are these defined as challenging behaviors? Anyone have an idea?
A lot of those go hand in hand with several mental disabilities and disorders. I've worked with child with schizophrenia and oppositional defiance disorders. It's very challenging behaviors, and both those childs have the intensive intervention plans.
Okay, Alex?
Yeah, I would totally agree with Debbie on that whole thing. I mean, you know, it's not just challenging for the child, but it's challenging for you. You know, having, you know, disabilities or not, I mean, a kid who's perfectly fine, you know, can have these, you know, challenging behaviors. It's just gonna happen, you know, they have a great day and then their nap time is just like, well, what is going on? Like, you try everything to get this kid, even if this kid is gonna push your buttons like crazy. You know, you're there for the kids, so you're trying to get them, but nothing's working. So what do? You're gonna go crazy and you're like, you know what, I'm done. Just sit on the table right here and read a book right here next to me, you know, because obviously nothing's gonna work.
And ultimately, I mean, how do you feel after this entire interaction?
Right, you're just exhausted.
You're exhausted?
You're exhausted, I'm sure the kid's exhausted too, you know?
Yeah. Is there any learning moments through all of this?
No.
Not at all.
What can you do at that point when they're up here?
Right.
You know, how did they get there?
Yeah. So challenging behavior is defined on the basis of its effects. So while some children's challenging behaviors are developmentally normal and effectively addressed by adult vigilance and the use of appropriate guidance, Pyramid Plus is focused on identifying evidence-based practices that prevent or address challenging behaviors that are persistent or unresponsive to those approaches. So I think that's the difference. So like what Alex is talking about, you feel like you're working to create an intervention to help with that child's behaviors to get to that next step so that we can get to that learning process, where we can get to a participation process, where we can start building on friendships. But ultimately, when there is an unresponsive state, then it becomes ultimately a disruption between you, the child, the classroom, the learning environment. So for infants and toddlers, challenging behavior must be considered with the context of the relationship of the child to the caregiver. So behavior that is challenging, for example, may manifest as attachment difficulties, sleeping, eating difficulties, excessive crying, and difficulty in soothing. Challenging behaviors may be defined as behaviors that interfere with the development and maintenance of reciprocal, positive, and nurturing relationships with the parent or the caregiver, which is what that could mainly largely affect. But I want you to know that challenging behaviors are not always acting out behaviors. It's any behavior that interferes with learning and can include withdrawn behaviors as well, such as shutting down and not actively participating. Do you guys think of that as a challenging behavior?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes it's hard for us to imagine an infant that's presenting challenging behaviors because they're learning, they're learning our tone and inflection. They're trying to understand what I want this, so you need to give it to me. Where's the rule book? I'm still learning how to figure out what it is that I want. So sometimes it can be really hard for us to understand that, infants can have that challenging behavior. And it's because of our assumption that children with challenging behavior misbehave. So in this training, that's not the case. Children of any age can have any challenging behavior. Challenging behavior is a form of communication or a lack of communication. Crying, screaming, self-aggression, those are some of the examples that we listed before. But those can also be behaviors in infants, and they can trigger hot buttons in caregivers, especially when they're persistent and occur multiple times a day. Okay, so it's always essential to evaluate an infant or a child's medical status to try to detect if the behavior could be due to an illness or disorder or other physical attributes. And then be sure that developmental screenings are always up to date. So making sure that families are doing regular checkups with their pediatrician. The doctors will do hearing screenings, vision screenings, social emotional. They'll check to see, is the child at a certain age, are they starting to grasp objects, things like that. So when in doubt, if your parents are ever asking if they ever have any concerns, the easiest response is one, because we're not medical professionals, we're educators. So when it comes to our knowledge, there's going to be things that we can do in the classroom, but it's perfectly allowable and acceptable to tell a parent, if this is a concern for you, if you're worried about their development, go see your pediatrician first. Okay? So when we talk about infants, remember that each child is born with a temperament. We talked about temperaments, and sometimes that can influence the behavior. They're colicky, or they've got inconsolable crying. There's challenges to their feeding and their sleeping, or maybe they just slow to warm up to people. Not every baby is going to be super excited for a teacher to walk into that classroom. And sometimes, and as we see it, as infants get older, we can start to see some of that aggression. And so how do they work with the primary caregiver redirecting that behavior? Okay? All right, so we're going to jump right into our first activity. What I would like for you to do is think about your current level of skill and comfort in developing and implementing a behavior support plan. So around the room, I have signs on the walls, okay? So over here I have just got the engine started on my comfort level when it comes to developing and implementing a behavior support plan. Here I have, I'm on the road but experiencing some mechanical issues and obstacles. While over here I'm warmed up and ready to roll. And then in the back corner we have the vehicle set on cruise control, feeling efficient and effective. So I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes to kind of evaluate your thought process on how you're feeling about your dynamic on behavior support plans. And then I'd like for you to choose a station, and then I'll have you stand up and go and stand at in that corner, and then we'll chat. Any questions? Okay, let's go ahead.
So I'm not feeling well either, I might go lay on that couch out there.
She doesn't know
And they all quit.
most of the letters information, like cannot tell me what any problems or.
I still haven't gotten ready
We
for
finally got
Garden
into
more
teacher who had
the
just
referral for the doctor.
And that was.
and now we're like we're back and like things work.
Going on
She's gonna go to college, I think.
People like do it 6 months span.
Okay, ladies. So let's stay in our spots. Stretch those legs. We always are sitting, so we'll enjoy the standing for a little bit. But so the majority of the class chose getting the engine started. Would anybody like to be brave and share?
Sure.
Abby?
Yeah, so I have a couple of things. I've never had a child that has been to that point where I felt like I could have a plan, and I've never had like the training or experience.
Okay.
And then I'm also put in a position where my position does not allow me to do a plan.
Okay. So completely new experience. So talk to me though about how, with all of the information that you have been given through all the sessions, do you feel like you have some information that if there was collaboration, if there was an outside source that was helping to support a family with a child, do you feel comfortable with a lot of the dynamics that you've learned over the past?
Yeah, definitely.
Several
If there
sessions?
was an outside source, I think it would be, because we have a kid,
Mhm.
but what my problem is my teacher gave up.
Okay.
So it's like.
Well, and it's definitely a whole team effort,
Yeah,
so,
and it's on her.
Yeah.
Over.
yeah.
So.
Anybody else just getting started? We kind of feel like it's the same thing, like it's,
I guess I could say something. I think I'm just getting started because I didn't make this class, but I've been doing this for almost 2 years now, so still new to me.
yeah,
I think it's just if I knew more about like how to go about a plan,
Mhm.
I would feel more confident for sure. But it's just lack of experience with
right,
the plan.
right,
So
right.
yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about we got the car started, we're on the road, but that check engine light is on.
I feel like I have the information and I feel pretty knowledgeable, but I've never had the experience truly to actually, where the rubber meets the road here,
Yeah.
so to say, so to speak.
Mhm.
I haven't done that. It's not been something I've implemented. I feel like I have the understanding, but not the experience, basically.
The experience, yeah. But you're saying you do feel confident with
The knowledge that I've gained,
process.
yeah, the knowledge that I gained here, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and I've tried to implement a lot of things that I've learned here in my class, but it's just, I feel like there's a set way of doing things, and I don't have that form in front of me to fill out, you know what I mean? It's like, it's there, but it's like, okay, what do I do from here, you
Sure.
know? Kinda.
Yeah. So then, so if that situation was to arise, though, you feel confident in yourself to be able to, see it through.
I feel knowledgeable.
Good. And Alex and Marlene, you feel the same way?
When I was a lead preschool teacher by myself, I had one kid that came up and I already had a plan. And it was more on touch and base. And then when I wasn't a lead and it needed to happen, my EC really led the discussion and got it started. And it was more of me telling the parent, like, this is what I'm seeing, and my EC saying, and this is what we can do. And then she definitely started it for me. So I haven't done it 100% by myself, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay, good.
I have one, I wasn't really, I was assistant, so I was trying to help her, but we had one who was not having that time, so we actually had to pull the parent in and do, behavior thing, like what we're gonna do. So I've had that experience, but now I have this other one who has a hard time in that, and I just can't, I have this plan, but I'm trying to put it in plant with the parents. So I have this part, but I don't have this.
Right.
I'm not getting much support from the directors and things that I want.
Right.
So I need to just start getting on the ball and be like, let's go, let's change this around. So
Yeah,
that's where
and that's what I said, is that it's definitely a full team dynamic. We're not gonna there's not gonna be any progress made if there are any members of that team that are not fully on board with the process. So, okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing, ladies. I really appreciate the feedback. So, while you're heading back to your seats, I just want to remind you though that, so it's a process. Developing and implementing, writing a behavior plan, it takes training. It takes experience, and in some cases, it takes expertise. It's specific in behavior intervention to successfully implement an effective plan. I'll give you an example. We were working with a family that had been in a previous program, and that family had been at that center since both children had been born. They started to begin to see an escalation in behavior. It kept going. Center was working very intensely with parents, but there was that disconnect, like Alex was saying, and ultimately it resulted in the family choosing to leave the program before they were ultimately forced to leave the program. Well, now we skip forward 3 months. It was only 3 months. They ended up at our center, and in a matter of maybe a month and a half, the escalation of behavior was so elevated that ultimately, for us, requesting and requiring that the families reach out to specific sources to make sure that this child was getting the support they needed, that was our requirement for them to be able to stay in the program. So this was at a level where we didn't have the expertise on it. We needed the parents, and we gave them direction to say, okay, this is the route that you can do. You need to follow this. You need to call this location. You need to seek out resources here. And it ended up working out so incredibly well because we were on conference calls, we were providing information and observation and assessment work, on this child, to the therapist, and there was a full team collaboration that ultimately a decision was made in the best interest of the child. And so, and while, unfortunately, that child is no longer in our program, at least we know that he's getting exactly what he needs, that's specific to his needs. Because at this point, he was 5, and we've talked about it before, there's only so much that we can do, intervention-wise, before they get to a certain age, and then it starts to really affect a lot of those dynamics that we've learned about in previous sessions. So for me, while it was heartbreaking to see the family have to choose, leaving our program, knowing that the child was getting the attention and the resources and the support that he needed made it all worth it, you know? And so, so one of the dynamics of Pyramid Plus is, you know, is reaching out to Charisse from last week. Charisse is a coach, reaching out to, you know, to folks like Charisse, to Rochelle, you know, coming into your programs and having them help to support you and families in any dynamic that would, again, help to create and implement, you know, a behavior plan.
Well, and I am a certified PPRYC facilitator, so we a lot of times can develop and do some meetings before really going into deep depth, and you guys are gonna do some of that with the roadmap activity that you're gonna do tonight, is to say, what have we done? What collection of data have we collected? Where are we at? Are we at the top of the pyramid? Do we need to do some more practice? We can use some of the tools that come from PTRYC to look and see if we can still develop things before it becomes this, oh, we think you need special help, blah, blah, blah. And the PTRYC process isn't saying, okay, you need an outside resource yet. What it is it's developing a team, including those parents, and saying, okay, here's what we've tried. It's not working. We want to gain some more information, and we want to try to develop a plan with everybody involved. The parents, you ask permission for who could be involved. It might be a PT or an OT or somebody that you feel could be helpful in the process. But even at that point, you're still not diagnosing anything.
Right.
You're partnering with the family to try to see if there's a way that we can get a plan put in place to support their child.
Right.
And we push it as far as they're willing to go. So at the point that they say, I'm not comfortable with this, that's where we stop. We don't stop doing everything we've been doing, we just keep doing it to the best of our ability. But we only go as far as that family is comfortable going.
Yeah, yeah. And we were really fortunate to have an incredibly supportive family. You know, we talked about the interventions that we were creating in the classrooms, and we really, we were educating the parents so that they could work on those interventions at home as well. It's just like we've talked about before though, the dynamics aren't always the same. When you're at home with mom and dad, it's very different as opposed to I'm in a classroom with a teacher and, you know, 18 other students. So, so a lot of times, you know, there can be that gap, but while I have never worked on creating or implementing a behavior support plan, there's been a lot of collaboration. There's been a lot of conversations really in connecting with parents and letting them know, you know, letting them, you know, just letting them understand that process, what you're doing to help support their child in the classroom. And then like what Rochelle said, if they are on board, great, because all we're doing is helping this child. If they're not, then we need to look at our next steps. So, and that's what tonight is going to be all about. So, okay. So, positive behavior support plans. You have your handout, which is handout 16.1. So, positive behavior support is one, it's effective for all ages of individuals with disabilities, 2 to 50 years and beyond. Okay, effective for diverse groups of individuals with challenges, mental impairment, oppositional defiant disorder, autism, emotional behavioral disorders, children at risk. Okay, the only comprehensive approach to address problem behavior within a variety of natural settings is the positive behavior support. Okay, our old way used to be that our intervention was reactive and we would focus on behavior reduction. And we would just go for the quick fix. But the new way is all about positive behavior support plans created through the new way typically require extra time upfront for gathering and assessing data because we need to understand what we're specifically looking for, what do we want to address, what are our triggers, what's the consistent information giving us, and then through plans that are carefully constructed to have a contextual fit and address the functional behavior by teaching appropriate skills, they tend to be so much more effective for children. Okay?
Can you show me what 16.1 looks like? 'Cause I feel like I'm.
It's the articles.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but this is.
Yeah.
talking about it.
And then, and then we'll talk about more of the positive behavior supports, the family Q&As and all of that. So yeah, all of those documents right up front. Okay, so research states that growing evidence indicates that an assessment-based approach results in more successful outcomes than other approaches to behavior intervention. Okay, so it's all about the process of teaching a new way, teaching new skills that are more effective to replace misbehavior that used to be more effective. And these changes in behavior tend to maintain over time. Okay, so in addition to this well-researched and comprehensive approach, it holds the promise for a long-term resolution of challenging behavior. Okay, so the research, it holds true for this conversation that we're having tonight. So, what are some behavior supports for infants and young toddlers? That's the second page here, the recommended practices for infants and toddlers. So this handout as well. So intervention approaches for infants and toddlers must be focused on the parent and the caregiver interaction and the child. Intervention approaches typically include teaching the parent or caregiver interaction skills to assist the infant and the toddler in coping with difficult situations, regulating sensory input, understanding routines, supporting the child's language and their social development. So research indicates that problems that occur in the infant or toddler social or behavioral development are likely to be early indicators of more difficult and persistent challenging behavior as the child grows older. And so some examples are issues of healthy attachment, predictable and appropriate interactions, consistent interactions of predictable and stable environments and routines are just a couple examples of behavior supports. So when we're supporting infants and toddlers, early intervention is essential. It's never too early to support any child. Evaluate their physical and medical history and their status. We want to make sure that we're making sure that their assessment, developmental status, like screenings. We want to make sure that there's parental evaluation or caregiver stress levels evaluations. That's very true. I mean, how intentional are teachers in the classroom if they're stressed because baby just is completely inconsolable and cries all day? You know, that can definitely play a large piece in lack of support. The natural environment is the optimal location for the intervention, so the home or the child care. And they must consider the cultural context of the family. Do you remember the video of the woman who spoke with the family about the help me out, the sleeping board, and she was specifically trained in how to swaddle the baby with the sleeping board. So
the cradle board?
The cradle board, yeah.
I use those. Yeah.
Do you use those? Okay. Yeah, and so I mean, because that was a part of that family's culture and it made sense for that family, it really made a huge difference for that child's development, because then they were able to sleep so much better. And I mean, it didn't really have anything to do with a lack of, of connection with the caregiver. It was that they were swaddled at home on a sleeping board, and by being able to make that, that modification for that family, it really made a difference, really made an impact. Plus too, for her, can you imagine how much better she probably felt being able to provide that for that child? Knowing now if baby sleeps better, we're gonna have better interactions, we're gonna have a better day. So those are definitely some important dynamics to remember when it comes to cultural dynamics, So we're gonna watch a video here. It's a short video, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, and it's a series of examples of challenging behaviors in children that are 2.5 to 5 years. So what I want you to watch for are the challenging behaviors that you see in this video. Okay, so tell me, what are some of the behaviors that you saw?
Physical aggression. Screaming.
Screaming?
Non-compliance.
Heidi?
I don't know the challenge behavior, but there was quite the moment.
That
was
might have caused the behavior.
Okay, so then, what about the adult behavior?
She's trying really hard to keep it together.
Yeah, you could tell they were stressed.
That I'm on camera, like, okay, don't hit me, please.
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
Stressed but still kind of composed, yes, they're there and yes, you can kind of see it, but not in her tone, not in her, like when the kid was laying outside, she's not like, just picking her up and screaming at him, you're doing
Just trying.
You're trying to calm them, because
Yeah.
once again, it's their kids, and they don't know if they're doing anything with that.
And so, why would we say that the behaviors that we saw, why would we say that they're challenging behaviors?
They're disruptive and they're interrupting learning.
Interrupting the learning time, okay?
They sometimes require you being physical to control the situation. Like, I had a child that was the schizophrenic one. There was a very special, not special, but specific way I was allowed to hold them. And it was like, I am now your restraint, your restraining jacket, and it was awful. But there were times where they got so dangerous that, okay, we're gonna sit.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, it's like if you've ever done CPR or the Heimlich on a small child, you're like, I have to be really physical right now, I'm sorry. And it feels bad and it looks bad.
Yeah. And so, do we feel like there was just a large scale disconnect between the children and each other? Or do you feel like it was just between the children and the caregivers?
It was both. It was both.
Yeah.
Because when the kid when the kid who was playing with the dinosaur kept hitting the kid with it, and then he got tired of it, and the kid started stopping. But the teacher was, trying to deal with this behavior over here. So he's trying to get more attention, be like, teacher, come and help us over here. But he just keeps pushing it and keeps pushing it. So I think it's from both.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, one of the dynamics that challenging behavior does not occur for no reason. Okay, there's a reason or a function of that behavior, and so the dynamic is we just don't know what the reason is for that child. And so finding the function of the behavior is one of the primary purposes of developing supportive, positive behavior plans. Okay, because if we're trying to understand what the reason is behind this. It's kind of like the same thing, it's understanding what's the trigger, you know? Understanding the reasoning behind it is going to help with that positive support behavior plan, okay? And the thing to remember is like behaviors can change, they can be shaped, they can be molded. And triggers and consequences, they play a huge role in shaping that behavior. So, I mean, if you're sitting there having your snack and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, but someone's got a dinosaur in your face,
Right.
that's the trigger. He was perfectly calm before. He was watching his friend play with the dinosaur, but once the dinosaur and the friend kind of invaded his space, that was his line. So now there's screaming, there's some kicking, because we want something and it's not happening. So then challenging behavior is most often related to some skill deficit, so language or social. So would you say with the two boys at the snack table, would you say language or social? Social. Yeah, I mean, we could have definitely used some deep breaths. We definitely could have used some words in, conveying to our friend. We could have used our Tucker Turtle, exercises. Behavior usually is telling us that the child is not able to do something versus that they will not do something. And a lot of times there's that misunderstanding. Oh, they just don't want to do that. No, that's not necessarily true. Maybe that they are still learning to articulate to their peers,
And like I have talked to Dad.
We talked about
That's my
splitting
boy.
them up.
Oh my.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only I saw Dad and talked to him twice, because I had Max for a week and then it was his transition week.
All right, sorry about that. So again, we were talking about challenging behavior works, and that the behavior that persists over time is working for the child. And what Debbie had shared was that, ultimately, if that behavior keeps continuing and continuing and continuing, ultimately, the child is they're going to get what they want. And, and that's what we're talking about here. So challenging behavior results in the child gaining access to something or someone. So like what Marley was saying, mom comes in, she is there to pick up, you said Addie?
Ada.
Ada, okay.
Ada, and mom is super pregnant, she's
Yeah.
due in less than a month.
Right, and what does Ada want? She wants to be carried, even though she's a big girl and she can walk. But she plays and does her.
If you call her name, she just drops.
She just drops to
Yes.
she drops to the ground.
Yes,
Yeah.
because she knows no one's gonna go pick her up. His mom can't pick her up.
Right.
It's very frustrating.
So avoiding something or someone, that challenging behavior. Think about when it's always time for cleanup. You always get those kiddos in the classroom that are always so ready to clean up, and then you always get those kids that are like, look busy because I don't want to help, so just look busy.
I know, it's
Go to the
Miss Debbie, can I
bathroom.
go to the bathroom?
Oh, yes.
My friends, I see you
Yeah.
cleaning up, you guys are gonna get Skittles.
I
Skittles,
do
alright,
stickers,
let's go
yeah.
clean up.
Okay, so we're gonna dive into our roadmap. So we're gonna follow the roadmap to determine what you've already done before this point, which is effective workforce systems, relationships, environment, and teaching strategies. So you guys are very familiar with your child vignettes and your family scenarios. I'm going to have you get back into your groups, your specific groups for your child, and then you're going to go into the role of the parent, the extended family, the provider, and then you're going to have a conversation leading up to forming your behavior support planning team. So you're going to fill in the questions on the handout 16.3 as you're having this conversation, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes to, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes to work together. And then once 10 minutes up, then we're gonna have our sharing group. And then we're gonna talk about if there was any information that helped or hindered the moving forward with the behavior support plan. Are there any questions on our?
Which one's the roadmap?
So the roadmap to behavior support plan.
Or the pyramid.
It's not a map, it's a sheet.
Okay, so 10 minutes.
Come on,
Why are you
Debaloo.
guys working on Maria?
Debaloo.
Who's Quan?
Don't start with me.
Wait, sorry. And this is.
They have 3 or 4. And
I just like it because I can put it in a ponytail. That's it.
this is like, no, she let me go at 2:35 for my 3 o'clock. And 2:40 shift.
Okay, so let's have Quan's group share back.
What do you want to know?
So from the questions, answer some of the questions. Give me some
Well,
feedback.
As far as the team, we looked at his file and we saw that we need to include the teacher, the parents, therapists, he had a psychologist. The pyramid, we felt like we should include the Pyramid Plus coach, and he also had a child find special ed coordinator. So we thought that that would be a good, solid team for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are people that he's involved in in his life as far as trying to figure out what's best for him.
Yeah.
Well, as far as what we had intentionally planning and teaching, we felt like we had used, we offered peer modeling and mentoring in effort to support him as far as not using aggression when he's, trying to communicate or resolve conflict. If he has a peer who's a strong person, they can help him to better manage his emotions and reactions to things. And as far as like the universal screenings, I just thought maybe that's something, an area we could offer. Like we could say, we refer them to their physician, or their, like we had talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Like maybe, you need to speak, because you said that they do social emotional
If the parents request, some assessments, if they go in making an appointment with the pediatrician to understand some different dynamics, if the pediatrician doesn't feel that they are capable of doing it, they will send them to a resource that can help with that. So, and I know you guys all know too. Child Fund is an excellent resource in helping with that as well.
Don't they do free services?
They do.
At the age of 3?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they get you in place with your early childhood programs too, that if your child is qualified, they get free schooling.
Right, exactly. So if you feel like that's something too, that I'm glad that you brought that up, because if you feel like there is something that is missing and that you do need it to be a part of that support plan, or even just the early conversations of this process, it's best to start looking at filling in those areas to address that now rather than later. So that way we've got all of our data, all of our information, so that we can move forward. If we're missing something, if there's something that's out there that we have that option and we're missing data, if we're missing information, if we're missing an opportunity to have a complete picture, then yeah, let's address it right away. Let's fill in that gap. So, good job thinking about that.
as far as anything else, we really, I mean, what, we kinda thought, we talked about the functional behavior assessment, we've got, I mean, we feel like he is, like we were talking about, he is getting his needs met that way.
Yeah.
With his aggression, towards others, and, I mean, it's like you said, if he wasn't getting what he wanted from that, the behavior would cease. So I think that he's getting something from that behavior with his peers and his parents, because he's aggressive towards his parents at that
Yeah.
time and stuff,
Yeah.
so. You know, he's somehow it's working for him.
Yeah.
And, you know, we need to figure out what is it that he's getting.
Right.
That, how can we change that to where he doesn't seek it that way,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay, good job. All right, how about Maria's group?
Okay, so Maria's team is her primary caregiver, which is her foster mom slash aunt, a caseworker assigned to them, their teacher, and their pediatrician. Those are all really positive relationships and huge support systems in their life. Her personal goal is to establish trust. Looking at that behavior assessment, she absolutely cannot self-soothe, nor is she easily calmed by another person. She doesn't smile or laugh, there's lack of reaction. So our hypothesis really is if we can establish trust, then we'll start to get more positive behaviors. And you know, we wrote up that little goal statement.
Okay.
And then her behavior support plan is really compiling all this to getting the foster mom and the siblings to engage with Maria in close proximity and having more resources at the school for her. And we monitor this plan by doing our little, there's a little schedule thing in here we did.
Right.
And monitoring specific times of the days where we can apply our.
Where you're embedding. Yep, very good.
also had a screening.
And screen, yeah. Okay, great. All right. So you're feeling really comfortable with that, you know, that beginning process, you know, building your team, okay? Which is perfect because we're gonna talk about our steps to developing our behavior support plan. Building a behavior support team. So talking about all of those that you just listed that can help to support with not only just the classroom, but at home with, you know, a therapist, be it speech, be it occupational. Person-centered planning, goal setting. We did some goal setting a few sessions back, and that definitely allows us to be very specific with the expectation. You set that goal because you're looking for a very specific outcome. So having that conversation of, you know, it's probably gonna be more than just one goal, there's probably gonna be a couple, because for Quan, we have a different dynamic at home than we do at school. So the team is going to need to, you know, to understand that there are going to be some different dynamics between different environments, okay? And then formally invite members to the team based on the family's permission and approval. So as part of the handouts, the positive behavior support Q&A and the do's and don'ts, those are part of, you know, the process to help with, you know, supporting the positive behavior plan and developing a team of key stakeholders or individuals who are involved in the child's life. And so as you guys listed, it's family, it's early educators, it could be family members, therapists, instructional or administrative personnel. When you identify who needs to be on the team, all team members should be participating in all steps of the plan. Remind that there are 4 steps to developing the plan, and this will take more time up front. So then we've got our functional behavior assessment, our hypothesis, our behavior support plan development, and then we're gonna monitor those outcomes. Because if we have a child that's achieving progress and working through you know, the outcome of one goal that we've set, then we need to monitor that, and then maybe we need to make modifications to, you know, to to continue to address any other areas or dynamics. Okay, so building a behavior support team. First, you want to communicate with the family about the process. You want to consider all of the people that it impacts the child on a daily basis. And you want to make sure that you formally invite members to the team based on the family's permission and their approval. Okay?
Don't make a Facebook group
That's right. Yeah. Let's make sure we avoid, let's make sure that we're avoiding the, social dynamic out there, putting it all out there. We definitely have a confidentiality dynamic about it.
Definitely don't Facebook about it.
Don't post on Facebook Marketplace. Anybody hear about a great child psychiatrist?
I'm in need of
Here's the phone number.
I'm on- Right. Yeah, let's not take that route. I do want to go back just really quick though, and I want to also let you know that person-centered planning is MAPS, Making Action Plans, PATH, which is the Planning Alternative Tomorrows with Hope, PFP, which is Personal Futures Planning, and then the Pathways, Child and Family Journey. So those are examples of the person-centered planning. So those are resources for that dynamic, okay? So again, going back to building that behavior support team, you do want to make sure that you're communicating, you're including everyone that the child is working with, and then you want to formally invite those family members. And then, once we get into that, then we can talk about that person-centered planning, which provides a process for bringing the team together to discuss their vision and dreams for the child, okay? And where would we be without the family partnership? You know, we've talked about this. So, you know, there have been many times in our sessions where we talked about parents are in and out, and I can't even barely get a hi and a goodbye in. You know, or when we do talk, you know, there's a wall there, or you know, they say that, you know, they're tired or they're hungry or they didn't sleep well last night, or you know, there's always, you know, we've heard all of those being shared in this room. Well, now we're going to talk about how we really make engaging and maintaining a positive relationship is so important. We want their help, so we need to make sure that we are being intentional with them and really engaging them through that process. It's not going to just benefit us. This entire behavior plan isn't just for us. It's for the parents as well. Okay? It's easier to include families in all aspects related to their child when they are valued and appreciated. So if we're going into these team meetings and if there's any dynamic where they feel defensive, if they feel that their parenting style is being challenged, if they feel like they're being made to feel like outsiders in a conversation about their child, how involved are they really going to be? Okay, family contributions may and usually has a large impact on the success of the plan. You know, parents buy into the plan and they support the plan, they support you, they support the therapist, you know, the early educators. There's going to be more success with the plan. And families may be included to the extent that they are comfortable and it fits their needs. So we're going to watch a video about two parents that we're going to watch two different videos. Parents are going to share some feedback, okay? They're going to share a little bit about the experiences of dealing with their child, Brendan's challenging behaviors. And we will be following Brendan and his family throughout sessions 17 and 18, okay?
When we went out anywhere, just go.
you might remember this couple back from session 6. We did watch some videos with Brendan's parents before. And I want you to think about everything that they just talked about, and that, you know, how does it make you feel now when we talk about, you know, creating behavior support plans to help support families? So give me some feedback about what they talked about, you know, collaborating with the, you know, the family-centered practices, the behavior support plan.
Well, I feel like it's gonna be offering them hope and,
Hope, yes.
maybe some kind of freedom in their lives.
Right.
To not be trapped at home because they feel like powerless to do anything outside of their home.
Well, I mean, so, I mean, despite the fact that, you know, they said that they couldn't go out to dinner ever, but I mean, they were alienated by their own family. You know, couldn't go to family functions. So, sorry, Ryan.
It's okay. I was just gonna say, I have a coworker who tends to say some really negative things about the families that we work with. And in the year that I've worked at this facility, I've caught myself like falling into that kind of judgmental state of mind just because we work so closely together. And so I think if anything, this could also help keep us accountable for how we're supposed to help families. Like, that's really our goal. And it's not to judge them or say like you're doing it wrong. It's just to, like you said, support them.
Right. I mean, going back to the family that I was working with, you know, all I just kept reiterating to the family was, we just want to help support him. We want to help him be ready for his transition for kindergarten. We want to help support you, you know, with the dynamics of, you know, interactions at home. And, you know, this is nothing but, you know, us coming together to do the best thing for him. And, you know, when the first time when I brought that up, I think it was a real shock for him, because that is not what he had at the previous 2 schools. That wasn't what he heard, you know, and a lot of times, and it's sad that it happens out there, but a lot of times when we do see these persistent challenging behaviors, you know, for us, we're like, well, we're a school, we can't provide one-on-one care like this, we don't have the resources for it, it's not safe. You know, we can list a million different, you know, reasons to justify our decision. But ultimately, what about the family? What about the dynamic of, you know, this child's next steps? What about the fact that in a few short months, this child will be going into elementary school? What then? You know? So I think it's really important to remember that there really is, you know, a dynamic where it's important to understand that they see it. They, you know, they're very much aware, and I think the word that she used that really impacted me was she said that she felt abandoned. There was no one there to help them. And we have, that's what Pyramid Plus is for. That's why we're here. It's, you know, it's to help to support those children that really truly need, you know, that extra care, that, you know, that time to say, this is something that needs my attention, and I want to work with the families to, you know, to provide this for the child, you know.
Hi,
Veronica.
this is off topic. Like,
Sure.
do I put the question somewhere for now, or, because I will take it off topic?
Because you're gonna take it, do you wanna add it to the parking lot? Yeah. So, so with that, I think that, you know, it's definitely, I think it's really helpful and important for us to see that there is another side of this. Alex?
Oh,
Marley.
Oh, Marley.
I just think
No, Marley, that's what I was raising my hand.
Oh,
Mom
right.
made a very good full circle moment when she said all of the suggestions were either discipline or punishment. And it brought you back to the very first quote at our first classic pyramid where they say, if a child doesn't know how to do this, we teach, blah, blah, blah. If a child doesn't know how to behave, we punish. And it was this beautiful little first circle moment because you started a pyramid with that family.
Exactly, exactly. So, when we talk about our behavior plan, one of those pieces in there is goal setting. So when we are talking about goal setting, during the support plan process, it's important to meet with the families and the team members to discuss the following. What are the behaviors that you would like to see decrease? We need to be specific. What is the targeted behavior you'd like to work on first? There may be multiple behaviors, but which one, we can't do, I mean, I'm not a professional when it comes to this dynamic, but if we're bombarding this child with, okay, you need to work on this, and this, and this, and this, and this, it could be a little overwhelming. The child definitely, but I think for us as well too. So if we're working consistently on, on a behavior that we'd like to work on first, I think it's good to identify that. How would you operationally define the behavior? What does it look like without subjective language? Without subjective language, what does the behavior look like? Okay, what behaviors would you like to see increase? There's always light and dark. There's always negative and there's positive. So we have to be the eyes to see that positive. What is the one behavior that could increase that would replace the challenging behavior? I think that's a good one to look at. And how would you operationally define the behavior? What does it look like without subjective language?
Can you give an example of that?
I'm sorry?
Can you give an example of what it would look like without subjective language?
So I think, so how would you operationally define the behavior? What does it look like? Look at it in context. Like in the video with the children. This child clearly was doing what he was expected to do. It wasn't the subjective language would be like, well, he just doesn't know how to use his words.
Okay.
He doesn't, he's not articulating, his needs. He's impulsive. I think labeling is more like that subjective language. We want to take the label out. We want to look at the facts. We want to look at the dynamic and the context. In that situation, the boy was sitting and having snack, and when his space was invaded, there was reactionary behavior from it. And we talked about that in previous sessions. We don't want to put opinion in there. When we're goal setting, it's factual. Because opinions are not going to help support us through this process. Operational definition is the description of a behavior that is presented in terms that are fully observable and measurable. So behavior that's presented in terms that are fully measurable. So when we talked about, you guys, I believe you have them in your vignette still, when you talked about Maria will make eye contact on 3 separate occasions in the course of 1 week. When you're giving those SMART dynamics, it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, okay? Well then, a good operational definition would mean that all team members would be able to agree at any moment in time on whether the behavior is occurring. So we can't be, basically it's telling us that we have to be specific. We don't want to use vague terminology. We don't want to have any sort of vague expectations on a behavior outcome. We don't want to define that behavior with an ambiguous tone, because the more description that we of a behavior that's presented, we can document that. We talked about how we used different charts to graph and tally or make note of, so that we can record that data. That's what we're looking for. So you've got to be specific and you got to have a description to that behavior. Okay, so here's some good example. This is vague. Wants control. They just want control. What does that tell me? Wants control of friends, of objects, of the room.
And it tells you their opinion. It's not their.
It does sound a little bit more opinionated, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's not, you're not,
manipulates the
it's not an
situation.
observation.
It's not an observation, exactly. It's an opinion as opposed to walks away from the adult when asked or told something. That's definitive. That's an action.
Descriptive.
It's descriptive,
observation.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're gonna go into, a goal setting activity. Do we feel like that's a good, understanding on the operational dynamic? Operational, okay, good. All right, so we're gonna do for 10 minutes, you're in your teams already. You're gonna use your family vignette, and I want you to create behavior goals for the child as a team, and then we're gonna share back with the group. Okay? So you're gonna use Quan and Maria, and then you're gonna create a behavior goal for the child as well as operationally define the target behavior. All right, any questions on the activity? Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we have our goals, and now I'd like for you guys to share with me, what does that operationally defined target behavior look like for you guys, for your groups, for your child?
For Maria, she withdraws from social interactions, avoids eye contact, and rarely responds to both verbal and nonverbal communication. We strongly believe that establishing trust will greatly improve these behaviors.
So establishing trust.
Yeah.
That's the target you want to be specific on.
Yeah, because if she can't be in the same room as her aunt / foster mom, then how can she be comfortable with people she doesn't even know?
Yeah. Okay. And do you feel like this is measurable?
Yes.
Like if I was in there and I needed to document?
Avoiding your eye contact,
Uh-huh.
you would notice that she doesn't go near the other children or adults, and you definitely notice that if you coo at her, to her behavioral assessment, she'll turn away, she won't respond to communication.
Okay. All right. Very good.
We felt like our opportunity was more at home with our child because we feel like a lot of his behaviors might stem from the fact that he doesn't have independence at home that he experiences at school.
Okay.
So we think that he would need to be offered opportunities for independence during his time at home with his parents, so that he can develop that management, of knowing how to manage his sense of freedom and independence, like he has opportunity at school. He needs that opportunity at home to develop that.
And so what are the specific behaviors you would be looking for with that independence?
Less aggression.
No, I think what we would look for is for him to, one of the things we did set up as a goal for him was to come to dinner, because that was a problem for him. He had struggled coming to dinner, so we set it up to where he would be given a warning, a 5-minute warning prior to dinner, and if he came when he was asked to come to dinner, that he would get a story time with his dad at that time, because that was also another time. He
The
struggled.
reward system, yeah.
Yeah, so what, I think it would be something around that, we would, make it to where maybe well, two of the things, he has a high chair. And we would eliminate that, we would say that he needs to be in a chair. And he has a crib, we would suggest that he would, go shopping with his parents to get a big boy bed. And those are two opportunities, I think, right there. And then offer opportunities for him to help mom during dinner preparation or setting of the table. Those are things he could do that would also involve him. I think it would empower him to, and want to be more part of the mealtime, and it wouldn't be such a almost obligation, like I don't wanna, instead of it being like a, obligation or it would be fun. It would be a set, like,
Change the dynamic,
yeah.
yeah.
Instead of, it'd be empowering rather than, cumbersome, I guess.
Very good. All right, so then, what's next? Well, so we talked about building our support team, and we talked about our family-centered planning. So when our next class, we're going to talk about the functional behavior assessment, which is in session 17, and then building that hypothesis. Then we're going to go into behavior support plan development, which is session 18, and then monitoring those outcomes. And I provided you a copy of Brendan's complete positive behavior support plan. I got this off of the challengingbehavior.org website. And so if you want to see what the actual positive behavior support plan looks like, I did provide each vignette a copy of that as well too. So so tonight, be sure to put that back into your folder, because that'll be a really great resource to look at as well. Okay. So our final thoughts, we want to make sure that we develop policy, process, and procedures within your program, agency, home, or other learning environment. It's going to take time. It's going to take expertise. We're going to need to make sure that there are members on the team that are comfortable and knowledgeable in developing and implementing the support plan. We can come up with ideas all the time. We can have a whole list of ideas. But if we don't implement, then our plan isn't going to go anywhere. All right? We want to make sure that we're utilizing the support of coaches and trainers. Rochelle, we talked about how Rochelle is a PTYRC, certified trainer. Sharice is a coach, and how you can utilize those resources as part of that behavior plan. And then be aware of all team members. Define acronyms and technical terms. Give practical examples to clarify concepts. The more that people understand, you're getting training on this. Parents are going to come into the process not understand, they're not going to know the terminology that we've been using for the past, 4 months. So when we're involved in this process, we're going to need to make sure that there isn't any gap of missing information. We want everyone to be able to understand the dynamics, what we're talking about, what resources we're using. So tonight's major message was that children engage in challenging behavior because it works. Meaning that they get meaning they are getting their needs and wants met. Adults should be prepared to change their own behavior when in that moment of seeing challenging behavior from a child. It's essential to create a behavior support plan as a team. And when we are setting a goal and we're targeting one challenging behavior and one replacement behavior is an effective way in developing a successful plan. And tonight, don't forget that you have the handouts 16.7 and 16.8 to help support with that dynamic. And I also just want to note that the adult is responsible for teaching appropriate behavior just as we teach literacy and numeracy and science. And it's our job to teach behavior as well. So shaping behavior for children with challenging behavior requires adult change. All right. So we're going to move into our thought seeds activity. What will I change in my behavior in regard to this topic? What will I apply to the families and the children that I work with in regard to this topic? And what will I take back to my team, co-workers in regards to this topic? So I'm going to give you 5 to 10 minutes to work on this activity. Are there any questions? Okay. And then once we're done with that, then we'll do our evaluations and our quality improvement.
The greater opportunity is now,
So what,
honestly,
what
because
I,
you have this opportunity without the other
Yeah.
child that speaks Mandarin.
yeah. So what I wanna know is that like, I just lost it. It's just, I'm sorry, you were going and going and then I forgot my question. Okay, I'll come back. Got it.
Okay, so let's wrap up with our quality improvement. So, what went well tonight?
I feel like we had good discussion.
Good discussion. Thank you, Ryan.
I felt like I got better perspectives on just everything, like better perspective on how the parents feel.
Yeah, having that like outside view with them is really interesting.
So, a better understanding on parents' perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
I think this was probably one of my favorite modules because this is one of the situations that draws me to those kids to help them. So taking a lot of this information back is going to be really helpful, hopefully, to get those.
Taking a lot of information back to the classroom. Thank you, Alex.
You're tucking the turtle. I turned the kid into the turtle. All right, you go into the turtle. How about that?
It's transition season at FITS, so coming into it with a little more background on the challenging behaviors and how it's communication is always nice because we kind of lose our minds that first transitions.
Do you guys all have one more? So often?
Usually like the
Once a
first
month.
2 weeks of the month, yeah.
We get them like at least once a month. We do transition because once they hit a certain age, they have to go back to class.
August is really crazy, it's hard.
So they're all learning.
Okay. What needs improvement?
Literally nothing.
Okay, well, thank you again, ladies. Have a wonderful evening. And then don't forget that our last class is the Saturday class. It's May 11th. We'll start at 8 a.m. Yep, we'll start at 8 a.m. And if you guys choose to want to bring something for the potluck, great.
Oh yeah, wait, does anyone have any allergies? That's
Dietary preference.
I'm allergic to the
Something
flavor
about
of
dairy.
fish.
I'm not anymore, it was just a trial run.